Welcome back to prettyWise, where honest conversation meets medical science, a podcast designed to help you age with beauty and class, offering evidence-based insights and real talk to support you at any stage. Today's episode is a little bit different than my usual podcast recordings. I originally started the podcast thinking we'd talk about, the aspects of aging, the physical aspects of aging. But I met someone recently that really kind of made me rethink the goal of this podcast. So we're doing some things a little differently today. We're going to talk about aging, but sort of not in the pretty way, if you will. This is like a real discussion on aging and, frankly, dying. A lot of times people don't want to talk about it in our age group, or we're dealing with it with our parents. Sadly, sometimes, siblings too, but, as we age, it's inevitable that the people around us will die. And we're going to talk about it today. And I met someone who I'm really excited to introduce you to. She is really special in that she is not afraid to talk about it and offers really practical insights about how to navigate this. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of prettyWise. So today we are going to talk about something we're going to go deep here, kids. We're going to talk about something that is unavoidable and a part of life, and especially for those of us in this stage of life, something that is all around us, and that is grief. Today I have a very special guest who I actually met playing tennis. And I started asking her a little bit about her business, and I was just so impressed, and I just wanted to hear more. And in fact, I think I said to her, wait, stop talking, because let's save this for the podcast. I want to hear everything that you have to say. So Haley is my guest, and she is such a wonderful, gentle spirit, has such a great heart and a real compassion, and this ability to talk about something that is very challenging for most of us, and it's grief. And I'm not just talking about grieving a loved one, but also grieving things that you can't, intangible things that pass us by, especially in motherhood. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to my special guest, Haley Purdy, who will tell you all about her business and how she got started. So Haley, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Jill, for having me.
Of course.
I'm Haley, and I run a business called Komorebi Griefwork and Yoga. Started this a couple years ago, and it was the result of kind of a path, a journey of exploring different healing modalities. I left my former life, my corporate marketing work, after 15 years in 2018, and I became a yoga instructor. And as such, I was, in that healing space and, learning lots of new practices. And I actually was listening to a podcast just like this and heard about a profession called an end of life doula,
Yes.
which I think we'll talk more about. But I just had this very deep kind of guttural feeling as I was listening to this. And having been kind of more tuned in through the yoga to my body, I was like, wow, what is this? It feels like something I could do. And it's very strange because I've not been, into death or I haven't had a very traumatic loss in my life yet.
Right. Yeah.
So it wasn't really my path, but I felt this feeling. I kind of looked more into it. And I visited with my astrologist who sometimes does chart readings for me. And I said, where would this land in my chart? Does this make sense for me? And she was really shocked to say there is a lot of grief and transition and like death elements in your chart. And I think you should explore this further.
Wow. So what is an end of life doula? Like literally what does it entail?
An end of life doula is very similar to if you think about a birth
Doula, yeah.
Familiar with.
Yep.
A birth doula is helping mother or a family move through this transition of the birth. So they're a support person who tends to be like very gentle, supportive. They do some education about, what's going to happen when this baby comes, and then is physically and, emotionally there to support, to play the music that you want to hear, to rub the feet if you need that, to rub the back. And just like a very calming presence. So an end of life doula is very similar, but for the end of life transition. So maybe perhaps someone's gotten a terminal diagnosis. They know that they are going to be dying soon. An end of life doula might educate them on what that process is going to look like, the dying process. They would be there perhaps physically as well to hold the hand, to play the music. Can be a
Wow.
big support for the family who might
Yeah.
not know what that process looks like, and they can bring in rituals or lightings of candles, whatever prayers, whatever the family might prefer,
Hmm.
to sort of keep a calming, gentle, loving space for that transition out of life.
So then you decided, I want to make this my career, and you founded Komorebi Griefwork. Can you tell us a little bit about your company, what Komorebi means? Because it's a Japanese word, I understand. So maybe kind of share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So komorebi is a word that has no comparison word in the English language. It's a Japanese word that means the light that filters through the trees. And
Mm.
I stumbled across this word, and it felt powerful to me, being a person who kind of loves nature and finds it very healing. We've all taken a walk in the park, and that moment where the sunshine kind of comes through the trees, and it's just a very warm and special feeling. And I think it relates to grief as well. Like there's something more, something bigger, a warmth, a connection to nature or whatever it might be.
Wow.
Uh, so that is, I took that for my name, and my work is molding together, kind of bringing together the traditional grief support. So things like talk support, exercises, writing, emotional processing, and the age old kind of ancient practices of yoga, breath work, and meditation.
Wow. So you lead a class for yoga for people that are grieving. And so they'll kind of move through the poses. And do you kind of prompt them to have, what to think about, or is it just a way to express your grief? Like how does the yoga part? That's so fascinating. I've never thought of that. That's such a great idea. I love that you came up with that. Hmm.
That's a great question. So I believe in it, and science seems to be supporting this more and more, that grief really lives in the body. A lot of times when we're grieving, we're really up in the head. Like we're thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future, we're anxious about what happens next.
We're
Um,
crying. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
but I believe that big loss, traumatic loss, kind of finds a space in the body, and if we don't process it or move it or churn it, it gets stuck, and it can cause pain or disease or illness. And this is kind of supported by books like The Body Keeps the Score, where the trauma kind of gets stuck, and we need to move it in order to process it. So there is gentle movement for folks who like that or can do that. There's also a lot of breathing work that can help with, in grief, there's a lot of anxiety. Something may have happened, and it might have happened suddenly. And you might be worried that it's going to happen again. It might happen to you.
Mm.
What does this next year look like without this person? What does my birthday look like without this person? It's a lot of like forward thinking and backwards thinking. So breathing kind of brings us right into the moment, right into the present, calms the body, calms the nervous system. So I like to bring in tools that folks can take with them outside of our work together, that they can use, breath work or gentle movement, in moments where they're feeling overwhelmed by their grief.
So it's the kind of thing you come once. Like is it something that you come once to do, or is it something people
Yeah.
come every week and they're constantly, working on how to process it? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Grief is a really obviously sensitive and deep
Mm.
topic. So typically, I'll work with a client for ideally like 4 to 8 sessions,
Yeah.
where we will identify kind of where they are in their grief and where they might want to go. And then we'll use various tools to kind of move through the processing. We also host workshops. So we've done some yoga and grief workshops where that'll be a small group, and the community element can be really powerful. Other people who are going through something similar um, get together in a room and do some of this work together. And we see a lot of really nice connection with that.
That's really amazing. I think that would be such a cool experience to be a part of. Is there so much crying? I just picture it a very sad place, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's like I don't know. I have to come. I have to check it out. I mean, do people that are not grieving attend, or it's really not? It's really for people that are
My
need to work
clients
on
have
stuff.
been folks who have had like a loss, a death, but also folks who might be anticipating a loss. So I have some folks who are in what we call anticipatory grief, where
Mm.
they might have a parent or a loved one who has a diagnosis that is looking, not great, and they're feeling very anxious. They might be caregiving that person, which is another huge element of what I do in terms of.
We'll definitely talk about that in a minute, but I want to stay on this because, like you mentioned, anticipatory. What about, if a divorce or, your children leaving home? Those are huge transitions that grief is a huge part of.
Absolutely.
Do you work with those kind of clients too?
Yes, and infertility, all these losses that are kind of like I think you mentioned, a little bit more invisible.
Yeah.
Um, and what tends to happen is when you have a loss, it brings up old losses that maybe haven't been processed.
Interesting.
So maybe you're getting a divorce, and the pain and the emotions that are coming up are bringing up, losing someone in your childhood, and so they start to compile. And so I have a number of clients where there are several things that they might be dealing with in the grief realm, and we kind of work through those together.
Wow, that's really amazing. I think that would be I feel like everyone could probably use that type of class, really.
Yeah.
There's so much to it. Okay, well, let's talk about, okay. So in your company, so you don't just do the yoga and you don't just do the end of life doula. Um, there's more to Komorebi. So why don't you tell me other things that you do? I know that you mentioned something about, um, is it wills or an estate or getting those affairs in order, which I think for my listening demographic is huge. Like a PSA to all my listeners out there: if you're 40s, 50s and above, if you don't have your will in place, and your affairs in order, do that today, right? So maybe talk a little bit about that piece of what your business does.
I would love to. I am really passionate about this part. We will call it advanced planning for the audience. So, let's start with, death is an uncomfortable topic. We don't like to talk about it, we don't like to think about it. And so, and as grief as well, it's something that folks don't like to go there.
No.
But a lot of folks wait until about like retirement age to figure out, the next steps with their wills, their estate, what they might desire for their end of life medical care. I really don't recommend waiting, because this is awful to think about, but we all know a family or a person whose life was taken too soon.
Yes.
An accident, or a heart attack, or folks with kids, and it's a tragedy, and it's horrible to bring that even into our mind space. And so I think we don't, right, we push it
Sure.
aside.
Yep.
That's not going to happen to me. So I don't need to do that work at my age, but we really do need to do this work as early as possible. So what I've been focusing on recently is prior to retirement age, kind of getting your ducks in a row. And this is wills and guardianship, of course. And with that, I kind of focus on, is this something that you can do yourself, or is this something that you need to speak with a lawyer about? There's like some confusion around that.
Right.
But more than that, there's also what we call advanced directives. And so this is your medical decisions and medical powers of attorney, should something happen to you where you weren't able to make decisions for yourself. So, trigger warning, I hate to, make us think about a situation where we would not be able to make our end of life decisions, and we're, perhaps in an accident. But when it's not laid out, there can be a lot of confusion and disagreements among family members. We've all heard that story where the parent wants one thing and the spouse wants another thing, and then someone has to make that terrible decision for you, and the family falls apart for the next 30 years. If you can make those decisions now, you're almost giving a gift to the people that you leave behind. They don't have to make them. They don't have guilt about it. They might not disagree about it. They know what you wanted, and they can give you that. So I kind of always say that, if something were to happen and you were to pass away, your family can focus on their grief and they don't
Right.
have to focus on these
Paperwork
medical
and yes,
decisions, what
yes.
happens afterwards.
That's awesome.
So it's really a gift that you can leave your loved ones. So I work with folks to work on their advanced directives, get those all signed and ready to go. And those are decisions like resuscitation, ventilation, things like that. You will decide on a medical power of attorney, the person who will make those decisions for you if you're not able to make them for yourself. We work on wills and guardianship, and then another huge area these days is what we call your digital estate. So
Mm,
today when someone passes away, everything that they had an account, banks, email is behind at least one password.
yes.
So this can be a nightmare for families as well, trying to go through someone's information, trying to, close bank accounts or get information.
Access. Yeah.
Everything is behind like a two-factor authentication. So we create a digital estate plan, which is a really safe and secure um, place where your passwords can live, or maybe one big password lives that can give access to a loved one should there be an emergency.
That's great. So do you actually do the drafting of the documents yourself, or do you have a third party to do that? Or
Yeah, so in Pennsylvania, at least, the documents are already provided by the state. So we just kind of go through the ins and outs of those and what they mean and what's going to happen once you sign them. When do they go into effect? How, most importantly, communicating to the people who you've now put in charge, making sure they know, where do these documents live?
yes.
What decisions would you want me to make in an emergency?
Yep.
And where can I find your passwords and everything I would need?
So I know for us, like I think the first time that we realized, okay, we need to get our affairs in order is we went on a trip, my husband and I, just by ourselves. And that was like, maybe 10, 12 years ago. And we thought, all right, God forbid, what's worst case scenario? So we did draft something up and it's in our lockbox, but it's the kind of thing that, you think about it once and you lock it up and you don't think about it again. Honestly, the sooner it feels like the sooner you do it, the more you can just kind of enjoy your life a little bit, right? So you're saying retirement age to have it all locked down, but for some people don't retire till their late 60s. Do you feel like, you have a advice about, if you're in your, what age would you advise to get
I would
started?
say like early 40s. If you have a kid in your 30s, you should do it right away.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of red tape after a loss, where kids can't get access to the bank accounts. Where are they supposed to live? Like it's just much easier to have it kind
Mm,
of all laid out. And
mm,
then your point about the trip, I recommend that folks revisit this every time there's a major life change. So either you move, you have a divorce,
yep.
you have a child,
Yep.
you have death, because even moving your address is going to nullify your will, which a lot
Oh,
of people don't know. So
yeah.
then you've got to
Wow.
it's a lot of work to revisit and kind of re-sign if you still want everything the same way, but it is important to kind of check back in with those documents.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. So, I mean, and this is something that, and it's not that expensive to do, right? Like, but you would connect us with an attorney that would do that. Okay. If
Yeah, there's
needed, but some of it you're saying you could do it on your.
situations where you can do it on your own. There's a lot of online tools that can help create like a basic will.
Great.
And I would walk through, when do you do it on your own and what situations would you need like some legal
That's
help?
great.
And then I can refer out to some estate planners.
That's awesome. Another thing that you told me that you do that I think is very interesting is you talk about different options for the how do we word this nicely? The body, the deceased, because we all just assume we're either going to be cremated or buried. But
Yeah.
you're saying that maybe there's a third option and it might be a little more environmentally friendly. So I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, and these topics are a little cringy, but one thing I kind of came into when I was doing my trainings is thinking of death as natural as birth. It really is,
Right.
and it's almost the most predictable thing that happens in our whole lifetime. Like we know 100% of us are going to die. So coming to terms with our mortality, talking about it a little more openly, which I appreciate you doing here today, can really help to like get our minds around some of this stuff and open conversations with folks about, what we might want. Our parents' generation and earlier than them had, periods of time where, kids were dying more often due to like plagues and illnesses, and they would sweep these kids under the rug and, never speak of them again. And so they were really taught to not talk about grief and death. And so in turn, kind of we've inherited that style of processing. And I think we're getting better. We're talking about it more. But if we can talk about it openly, it even opens conversations with our parents' generation of like, hey, what do you think you might want? And
Yeah.
where are your documents?
Yeah.
Those things that, we don't want to think about, but it really is truly going to happen.
Yep.
Um, so hopefully not sooner than later, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, so when we think about, afterlife options, most folks know of the two kind of main options, the burial or the cremation. And what a lot of folks don't know is that cremation is a huge use of fossil fuels. So for folks who are environmentally conscious, I like to get the word out that a lot of people go with cremation because it's a little less expensive than burial and a plot and all of that. But if you are concerned about sustainability, it is actually not great for the environment. So there are some other options,
Okay.
and they're getting a little more well known, but they're under the radar. So there is something called green burial, and this is instead of being buried in the type of box that would live forever under the ground, like a traditional funeral, you would be buried in a biodegradable box that would ultimately kind of become part of the earth as
Mm,
well as your body becoming
mm,
part of the earth.
mm.
One of the really sweet things about it is your loved ones can put art on the box. It's kind of a natural thing. And essentially, instead of having a plot, your family's given a set of coordinates in like a lovely field or meadow, and that is where your space is. Um,
Wow. So do you have a ceremony and all that, or?
yeah, you can have anything you like. And that's sort of
Wow.
the fun of this stuff. Once we open it up to talking about it, there are lots of options for, funerals and rituals, and we can really decide if we want. We just have
Yeah.
to start
Yeah.
talking.
It seems now that you say that, like it's so antiquated to just really have those two pathways. Like the opportunities and the creativity in a way is endless, of what you can do and what this loved one, means to you and how they can keep, you know, going on. Wow, that's
Absolutely.
something. Yeah. Hold on, we're gonna pause for a sec because there was something oh, okay. I have it. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the holidays. I know you had mentioned that for a lot of people, the holidays brings up a lot of emotions with grieving. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, as we all know, the holidays are kind of a time of being inundated with joy and family and, togetherness. And for someone who has lost a loved one, this can really highlight their absence. You're constantly seeing families on holiday cards, commercials, the stores. It's just really all encompassing. So that becomes even more overwhelming for someone who might have lost someone in the last year or two. Um, and so we like to support folks who are going through the holiday season, who are dealing with loss. Um, and there's a couple things that we recommend. And one is just, understanding that this is going to be an overwhelming season and providing yourself some downtime and some space to not be inundated with those things. Um, we also recommend, if you've recently lost someone and this is the first holiday without your person, families tend to have traditions that have maybe been going on for many, many years, and it might not feel right without this person. And so communicating with your family members about that early, often creating boundaries as needed. One thing we suggest is, saying it doesn't feel right for me to do this tradition this year, but it might feel okay in the future. And that's like sort of like a light boundary of kind of what's
Mm-hmm.
going to work for you this
Mm-hmm.
year. So maybe creating a new tradition that has that person in mind. A ritual, and it can be just yourself, or if you want to share it with family, lighting a candle for your person, or making their favorite dish, maybe a special ornament, whatever it might be, to sort of remember and stay connected to them in this, rough patch
Mm-hmm.
time. Um, and then the last thing is there's just so many parties and events going on during the holidays, and that can be really hard for someone who's grieving. Firstly, folks don't like to talk about this stuff. So a lot of times folks are avoiding the fact that you've lost someone really important, and that can be really hard.
Right.
And it's overwhelming to be in a social environment when all you're thinking about is your person. So I like to recommend that folks find people in their friends and family networks who are going to be understanding if they maybe make a last minute RSVP change, or come to the party and leave early.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like your go-to people that and those might be the RSVPs that you might feel like you want to accept, are ones that aren't going to pressure or judge if it's just not feeling good.
That got me thinking too, at a lot of parties, a lot of times there's alcohol, and that could lead to abuse of alcohol because you're trying to numb yourself, and that's not good either. I'm sure it's, yeah, it's a challenging time. Do you recommend, like, do you not bring it up? Like, if it's hard, is it better to bring it up? And of course it's better to bring it up, right? Than
Good
to not talk
question,
about
Jill.
it.
Great question. Yeah, I think I hear a lot of times folks think that if I say their person's name, they're gonna remember,
Mm,
and I'm gonna get them feeling sad. And what we don't maybe realize is like someone who's lost their very important person is thinking about them all the time, every day, probably multiple times a day.
yep.
So you bringing them up is actually not going to remind them of what's happened. They are already reminded. It shows that you are thinking about them, that you're recognizing that they are in a hard period, and that you care about their person.
Mm,
So I always say, say the person's name, ask them how they're doing, show up. Supporting grieving friends is hard, but the more that we can not shy away from the hard stuff, the more supported they will feel.
right. Yeah. And the one thing we didn't talk about yet, if you could touch on it briefly, is like caring for the caregiver too is also, something important. Like respite care, I guess, is what, we used to call it
Yes,
nursing. But
yes.
what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So part of what led me to kind of combine the yoga and the grief work was I was volunteering for hospice as part of my program. And I was at a home where a 96-year-old woman was on hospice, and her daughter was caring for her in her daughter's home. Um, and what really struck me was the daughter's situation, the round the clock responsibility, not only caring for the parent, but also her own children. The anxiety of, like, if I leave the house, what might happen? Um, Really lack of sleep because you're worried something might happen in the night. So a caregiving situation is absolutely brutal on the body and the emotions. And so I kind of thought, wow, I could really see, bringing in some self-care to this kind of situation, yoga, breath work, meditation, etc. Things that we know help aid in, better sleep.
Yeah.
Um, and so with caregiving, it's really about finding time for yourself. And end of life doulas also provide respite care. So that means that they will come in, you can go out. They are
Mm,
trained and know how to deal with any sort of
okay.
situation.
Yep.
And so, they will be calm and hold hands and read and do whatever, the dying person might want. And giving yourself those breaks, physical and mental breaks. So, Jill, I lost you. I lost your mic.
Do you hear me at all?
Now I got you. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Here, I'm just gonna X this out here. And let's just go back to that last conversation. A new recording track started due to changes in my devices. I didn't touch a thing, but this is the story of my life. Okay.
What?
It's just my second track now, which is fine. Okay. Um, so what was the last thing we said? Then I said, without guilt. So maybe just pick it up.
I think whatever you asked, I didn't hear, but that was like a new question.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and also without the guilt, because I feel like there's so much guilt about I can't leave, something's going to happen, and what a terrible daughter. A daughter doesn't leave her mother's side, or whatever that comes with it. And, you have to be human too, right? So
Yes.
it's,
And I think as mothers, we're expected to do it all, care for the kids, care for the parents, exercise, work, cook,
mm,
present holidays. Like it's overwhelming.
it's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So for this generation, I think they're calling it the sandwich generation where we're, starting to care for our parents, but also still have kids.
Yep.
It's really a lot. So I
It's a
think
lot. Yeah.
looking for that support in whatever way you can get it is really huge.
Huge. Well, I can't have you going out on a sad turn. I'm going to ask you some fun, kind of pretty wise questions, and kind of rapid fire. So don't think too long. Just kind of whatever comes to your mind. So first is what's bringing you light now?
What's bringing me light right now? As much as it can be dark for some folks, I am really loving the holidays ramping up. I have young kids, so they're still sort of in the magic, and it just really brings joy. I'm a Sagittarius December birthday, so this month is really
Me
kind of
too.
for me. Yeah,
What's your birthday?
December 19th, so I'm really right there.
Yeah, I'm December 6th. That's great. What's a myth about grief that you wish everyone understood?
A myth about grief that I wish everyone understood is that it has a timeline, that it has an end date. So a lot of times you'll hear someone say, oh, it's been a year. Like, why hasn't she
Mm,
moved on? And the reality is, um, as long as you've loved a person or as much as you've loved a person is as long or as much that you will miss them when they're gone.
mm,
Losing a parent, that person's been in your life since you've been born. You've never had a
mm,
life without that person.
yep.
So the idea that there's sort of some timeline where this is going to wrap up and we're going to move on is a big myth that I wish we could change. Um, One of my teachers describes grief as being like a backpack that we carry, a backpack, let's say, full of rocks. And so when you first have a major loss, that backpack is so heavy you can barely hold it up. It's extremely overwhelming and painful and heavy. And as time goes on, and if you do the work to sort of process the emotions and move the grief, you set down a rock here and there,
Yep.
and it gets lighter. And that's what I can say to someone who's grieving is that, over time and with doing the work, it will get lighter. It might never go away. You'll always be wearing that backpack through the rest of your life, most likely. But it will get lighter and it won't feel like such of a burden to carry.
That's beautiful. Love that. Um, what's one practice you return to when your nervous system needs grounding?
Oh, great question. All right, will you do it with me? It's called a box
Okay.
breathing. Okay.
Okay. I've done this. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So essentially, as we breathe, we're going to imagine a box, like a rectangle.
Okay.
And so on the inhale, we're going to inhale for 4, and then we're going to hold for 2, and then we're going to exhale for 6. So the exhale is going to be longer than the inhale. And then at the bottom of the exhale, you're going to hold for 2. And so imagine that box, hold for 2 is up the side, then inhale for 4 across the top, exhale for 2 down the side, hold for 2 down the side, exhale for 6 across the bottom. Hold for 2, inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. And that's it. And this
Yeah.
is a trick that will naturally calm your nervous system. So,
It really does. It's
yes,
amazing. Yeah.
folks can do it like before your public speaking or whatever it might be. But if you're having an anxious moment, an overwhelmed moment, if you're grieving, if you're caregiving, driving in your car, pause, pull over, do your box breath, it's going to
Mm,
naturally bring you down from that what we call sympathetic
heightened.
nervous system to parasympathetic nervous system.
Awesome.
Rest and digest.
Love it. Two more. What's a piece of wisdom that you'd give to your younger self or
I,
your daughter?
yeah. I think I would tell myself that you don't have to have just one career in your lifetime. That maybe,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that maybe what you start out in and what you study is really wonderful and builds tools. And it's never too late to find what I call your soul path. So I think when I was in marketing, I was on a career path. And once I found kind of yoga and grief work, I feel like I've connected to my soul path, which is what
Love
I'm here
that.
to do.
I love that. And as a mother of two college age sons who really think that they need to have it all figured out by
Yes.
the age of 19, I try to tell them this. And they don't believe me and they'll find their own soul path. But yeah, even for myself, I was a theater major and an English major, and now I'm a nurse. You just don't know the
Yeah.
way that life is going to guide you. And now I'm doing a podcast on aging. So it's like, who would have thought, so that's a great piece of advice.
Mhm.
Okay, my last question to you is, what's a book or a person who deeply shaped your approach to healing?
Okay. This is what I'm going to recommend for anyone who is grieving or is supporting someone who might be grieving.
Great.
Is Colin Campbell is the author, and it's called Finding the Words. And he is a dad who lost both of his children in a tragic car accident.
Oh my goodness.
And he writes about, really navigating his grief experience, but also really speaks to folks like friends and family who are trying to support someone who's had a tragic loss. And the title, Finding the Words, refers to, we often hear, like, I just have no words, for what
Right.
happened to you. I have no words. And he kind of says, like, that's a cop out. You're
Right. There are words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to support your person, and here's how to do it. So I
Mm,
really love that one. It's an incredibly powerful book.
great. Awesome. Well, to close things out, where can people find you and get more information, follow you on Instagram, or get inspired to take one of your classes?
Yes, thanks. Komorebi Griefwork is my Instagram, Komorebi. Same as my website. And I teach yoga in and around the Philly area, separate from grief, but really focused now on, advanced planning, grief work, and moving the body and churning that stuff through.
Great. So someone can just reach out, have a consultation, like on the phone with you to find out
Yeah,
if,
yeah, it's
okay.
no cost call to figure out. You
It's
really have
awesome.
to know that I'm a fit for your situation if you're going through a hard time. So we chat, figure out kind of where you are, decide what you might need. I have folks who can't really do yoga because of body restrictions, and that's fine. There's a lot we can do sitting in a chair.
Well, this has been really just so enlightening and such a wonderful, important conversation to have. Normally, my podcasts are about fun things like, skincare and
Yes.
anti-aging stuff. So this is something though it's so important. So I'm just so thrilled that I met you and that this worked out. And it's been a real pleasure getting to talk to you. So thank you so
Same.
much.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.